Have you ever gone out to eat and said, I'm going to get steak tonight? And then you get to the restaurant and you look at the menu and you think, maybe I want chicken. Perhaps I'll have fish. Soup sounds good. No, it's too hot outside. I think I'll just get a salad. And then you become so mentally frustrated and drained, you just wind up losing your appetite altogether. This is an example of decision fatigue. When you're going out to eat dinner, it's really not that big of a deal. But when it comes to making major life-changing decisions that can impact your relationships, your finances, your mental health, and your physical health, a decision like deciding to stop consuming cannabis, the decision fatigue can become absolutely exhausting and even in some cases paralyzing. And I can tell you there are thousands of people out there right now, you might be one of them, who are suffering from this horrible side effect of cannabis substance use. It was a side effect that I struggled with after 9 years of a cannabis substance use disorder. For most people, the hardest thing about quitting cannabis or stopping the use of cannabis, it's not the withdrawals, despite that THC detox can take a fairly long time. It's not the peer pressure, the social pressure. It's not the cravings. It's not the insomnia and the irritability. For most people, it's the inability to make a singular decision, a decision that does not have to take days, months, years, or even decades to decide. I can't tell you how many times throughout my active cannabis substance use I said to myself, I think I'm going to use edibles, but I'm not going to smoke. I'm not going to smoke. I'm just going to vape cannabis. I think I'm going to quit today. No, I'll wait until after my birthday. I'll wait until after the new year. I think I'm only going to smoke in the evenings. I'm going to save it for just socially during the weekends. I'm not going to smoke weed at all. I'm just going to drink a little bit of alcohol at night and use nicotine. I'm not going to use any cannabis. This is a very real example of decision fatigue when it comes to cannabis substance use. And sadly, a lot of people fail to realize the amount of mental clarity and mental bandwidth that this decision fatigue is absolutely robbing them of. Mental clarity and mental bandwidth that should be put towards your business, your career, your financial goals, your physical health and mental health goals. So in today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you identify this decision fatigue, and then I'm going to give you a plan for becoming more decisive, because being decisive is a key character trait that's been identified time and time again among successful individuals. If you are a high-performance individual who values taking action, we have a science-backed method that helps people quit nicotine and cannabis with a 98% success rate in as little as 48 hours, privately, without disrupting your public life or image, and without relapse. And I put a link to that in the video description. The worst thing about decision fatigue, the scariest thing about it, isn't the fact that it's robbing you of all this mental clarity and mental bandwidth that needs to go into your physical health, mental health, relationships, business decisions, executive decision making. It's not that. The worst thing, the scariest thing that I've found with people is a majority of people, when they're under the fog, when they're under the delusion of cannabis substance use, they are not able to appropriately identify why they feel the way they feel, the emotions that they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And if you don't understand why you feel the way you feel day to day, it is impossible to come up with a plan and a solution to create real lasting change. Even worse, so many times in my life, I spent so much focus on, should I smoke, should I not smoke? When will I smoke? What will I buy it from? Should I have indica? Should I have sativa? What winds up happening is we drain all of our mental bandwidth and we waste all of our time thinking about cannabis. We have nothing left in the gas tank upstairs when it comes to the decisions in life that are actually going to move the needle forward in our lives, that are actually going to move us closer to accomplishing our goals. And what winds up happening is we become super overwhelmed by even the smallest of tasks. I can't tell you the amount of business professionals that I've worked with over the years who have called me and said, Dr. Frank, I'm overwhelmed to answer my phone. I'm overwhelmed to even check my email day to day in my work, because they are suffering from such a severe amount of fatigue because of their inability to make a decision as to whether or not to stop consuming cannabis. And they wind up spinning their wheels all day long, just trying to make these tiny micro decisions. And what winds up happening is they wind up getting really, really burnt out. Now, that's not even the worst part of all of this. If your brain, you've been consuming cannabis like I did for several years, maybe several decades, like I've seen inside our one-on-one coaching programs with people, what winds up occurring is your brain gets overwhelmed, it gets stressed, anxiety strikes, and then your brain defaults to its normal habit loops, its normal patterns. And if you're feeling stressed, anxious, whatever it is, overwhelmed, frustrated, mentally exhausted, and your default behavior has been consuming cannabis to cope with those emotions, you're going to wind up consuming more cannabis because it's the easiest decision to make. It's the path of least resistance, but it's the most destructive path. And I have seen this path of destruction, and that's why I call this decision fatigue the silent killer, especially when it comes to entrepreneurs, business owners, executives, because they wind up wasting so much of their mental bandwidth that they need for executive decision making. And then there's nothing left in the gas tank. I see this too in parents, right? I've worked with a lot of parents. They have 3, 4 kids. They're trying to manage a household. They're trying to manage a career, and they have nothing left in the gas tank. That's why I refer to decision fatigue as the silent killer, because a lot of people suffering from it don't even realize that they have it. But now, if you have been consuming cannabis for a long time and you are finding yourself just burned out, completely burned out, despite the fact that you love your family, you love your kids, you love your husband, you love your wife, you love what you do for work in some cases, but you feel burned out all the time, it's because of this decision fatigue. It's because of the inability to make a singular decision, a decision that you shouldn't be dragging out for days, weeks, months, or decades. A decision that can be made in as little as 48 hours. Even worse, what happens is over a long period of time of suffering from this decision fatigue, one of the side effects becomes an inability to trust oneself. I refer to this as the subconscious rot that cannabis substance use creates. You start to doubt your day-to-day decisions. You start to lose trust and confidence in yourself. And over time, this becomes one of the worst side effects of this decision fatigue. Life is essentially just a series of micro decisions. Micro decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis. What am I going to eat today? What am I going to wear today? When am I going to answer this email? Should I call this person back? What am I going to do with my kids after work? It's a series of small micro decisions, but those micro decisions stack up over time, and they are what determine the outcomes of life that we're going to experience. So even though this might sound like a small thing, it's actually a very, very big, important topic to understand. So before I give you some practical solutions to overcoming decision fatigue and how you can fix it, you have to start with asking yourself the question, why can't I make that singular decision? In most cases, it's rooted in fear. One of my favorite things to say, fear, false expectations appearing real. People have a very real fear of what is my life going to look like without cannabis, but then on the flip side of that coin, they have the fear of what is my life going to look like if I don't stop consuming cannabis, and they become paralyzed by that fear because of the decision fatigue surrounding it. So here's 6 things that you can do to overcome decision fatigue. And these 6 things are really rooted in a series of systems that I have helped hundreds, if not thousands of people implement when it comes to overcoming substance use disorders. System number 1 is eliminating the decision fatigue loop. And you do this based on how you speak to yourself. Are you someone who says, I'm going through the process of sobriety, quitting cannabis is a process, I quit smoking weed? Or are you someone who says, I stopped smoking, I don't smoke, I'm a non-smoker, period. I made a commitment and I'm going to see that commitment through. System number 1 starts with how you speak to yourself and to some extent how you speak to others when it comes to decision making. Eliminating that loop of indecision, indecisiveness. If that sounds overwhelming to you, I want you to see this as an opportunity to get excited about becoming more decisive. Sometimes people will call me and they'll say, Dr. Frank, well, this happens all the time. Dr. Frank, I really love smoking weed, but I want to quit. What should I do? I'm not really sure what a motivation is. And time again, I can't tell you how many times I've found with clients that they have a chance, an opportunity to get excited about being decisive in their sobriety and strengthening that muscle of decisiveness. Being sober isn't about saying no 100 times over and over again all day long. It's about making a singular decision and sticking to it, not questioning it. Tip number 2, and this is maybe one of the most important ones, automate your routine. When you first quit a drug, you have to realize that you just made a major life change. And the more things in your life you can put into systems and you can automate, the better off you're going to be, because addiction thrives in chaos. It thrives in disorganization. So if you can start to automate your life in certain decisions, wearing similar clothes each day, eating the same lunch and dinner each day, figuring out planning ahead of time, you're going to be much, much better off. When you first quit drugs, there's enough going on in your mind. Your brain craves organization. It craves automation. So the more simple tasks that we can automate day to day, the better off you're going to be. If you've watched my videos over the years, I'm often in the same pair of clothing in every video. And it's not that I have only one pair of clothes. I have multiple pairs of clothes that look the same, because now I don't have the decision fatigue every day of what am I going to wear? How am I going to dress? How am I going to look? I have many parts of my life that have become automated. They're default behaviors that I don't have to think about. Choose 1 to 3 non-negotiable, simple daily habits and commit to those things, even if you're still consuming cannabis, because this is somewhere where we can start to build that automation despite continued cannabis consumption. And all we need is a little bit of automation, a little bit of positive momentum, and then that can lead to majorly positive outcomes in a person's life. Tip number 3 is setting up a system of triggering events. And I'm not talking about triggers to smoke weed. I really don't believe in triggers. I believe in understanding why we smoke, but triggers, look, if you look at me and people that I work with, just breathing was a trigger to consume cannabis, okay? Or nicotine or pornography or alcohol. Just existing was a trigger. I'm talking about implementing in new triggers that then kick off your system. I'll give you an example of this. Every morning when I wake up, I'm typically not motivated to work out. I'm exhausted. I work a lot. I have a young child at home. I'm just really not interested in working out. I'm a little bit older, so it's a little uncomfortable, but I have a trigger in place. I wake up, I drink like 20 ounces of beetroot powder and electrolytes mixed together. When I drink that drink, it's a trigger for me to go to the gym. Going to the gym and working out is a trigger getting me in a mood to handle my day-to-day work stress. I did something challenging. Now I'm going to feel better about the work stress I'm facing on a day-to-day basis. Then I get through work. When I complete work, when that ends, it's an automation or a trigger to go spend time with my family. It's very systematized. But my initial trigger for healthy behaviors going to the gym was literally drinking beetroot juice powder and electrolyte powder. A common supplement I recommend to people when they're going through cannabis detox. Little bonus tip for you, by the way. Tip number 4 is limiting your choices. I call this the KISS method. Keep it simple in sobriety. Your brain craves automation and it craves simplicity. Wearing the same clothes, planning out the same meals. You want to start to simplify your life in as many ways as possible. I was working with a client recently, a high-level business owner, and he was telling me, he's like, look, my house is chaotic. I got all these kids, and, it's just constant chaos. How am I going to simplify things? And this individual was very well off financially, and I said, well, have you ever considered hiring a nanny? And they were like, no, that hasn't really crossed my mind. So I was like, okay, let's literally go on care.com. This isn't a sponsored ad for care.com, and start interviewing nannies. Let's start to simplify that part of your life, right? Because managing 3 young kids can be chaotic. And I was like, what about a housekeeper? Do you have a housekeeper? And they were like, not really. No, we don't really have like a cleaning lady. I was like, okay, you can afford one. Great. Let's go online and hire a cleaning person, and let's start to simplify that. Let's start to automate that. Let's start to reduce the amount of chaos that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. And I can almost guarantee you that quitting cannabis is going to become easier. You need to start to build out these systems and routines. But here's the thing. A lot of people, when they're struggling with a cannabis substance use disorder, it sounds simple and stupid when I say it on this video, but it's really not, because they've spent so many years under the delusion, the fog of cannabis substance use. So even though these concepts that I'm explaining sound simple, sometimes arriving upon the answers is a little more complex or not so obvious as it sounds. Tip number 5, use a decision filter. Every time you make a decision, ask yourself, is this supporting the future version of me, or is this sabotaging the future version of me? You want to look at all of your decisions through the lens of a decision filter. Don't just make impulsive decisions. Really think about the long-term outcomes of those decisions. I was working with another gentleman recently, and they had some impulsive spending behaviors, something that's very common in addiction and substance use, even if you're making really, really good money. And I was saying to this person, look, when you go to make a purchase, you have to think to yourself, how is this purchase advancing the future version of me, the version of me that I want to be? And if it's not making it past that decision-making filter, then maybe we need to second guess this purchase. And I'm all for luxurious purchases. Trust me, I really am. I'm not going to lie. I like some material things. That's fine. I have no shame in saying that. But when I'm buying things, when I'm making investments, when I'm making purchases, when I'm making financial decisions, I'm trying to focus on the long-term outcomes of those decisions. I'm very much a firm believer in investing in things that are going to better me, not something that's going to tear me down. And cannabis and my investment continued into cannabis was simply tearing me down. It was tearing down my relationships, my physical health, my finances, my business. Almost every aspect of my life was going on a downward investment trend when it came to cannabis. Now, tip number 6, journal your decisions and really pre-plan. You can literally journal what drained me today. What gave me energy? What other things in my life are resulting in the way I feel that aren't related to substance use? Start to journal a little bit, even if it's just a note on your phone or a voice text to yourself. Start to journal and start to identify why you feel the way you feel, and then start to plan. When I write out things, I am able to see things that need to get done in advance. And if I start getting ahead of stuff in my life, I have significantly less stress and significantly less anxiety. Remember, cannabis is very much a drug of procrastination and demotivation. I have seen cannabis time and time again completely halt pre-planning in people's lives. And when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And planning is a very simple way to overcome decision-making fatigue. And I'll give you another bonus tip. This could be as simple as planning what you're going to say the next time you're at that family party or that business event and someone offers you a drink of alcohol or someone offers you a hit of cannabis. Most people plan to fail ahead, which means they're planning to fail. And if you don't have a plan, it's almost impossible to achieve success. If you sincerely take time and put effort into doing these 6 things, it's going to lead to a greater level of decisiveness. You could build that muscle of decisiveness strictly by committing to quitting cannabis. And then you can apply that decisiveness to your relationships, your business, other things. But if quitting is too overwhelming for you right now, try doing each of these 6 things on a day-to-day basis, build up some confidence, build up some positive momentum, and then tackle quitting cannabis. And with building out the character trait of decisiveness appeals to you and you are a high performance individual, maybe you're a business owner, an entrepreneur, a business professional, a C-suite executive, we have a science-backed method that has a 98% success rate in helping people quit nicotine and cannabis in as little as 48 hours, without group meetings, without having to admit you're a powerless addict. And we do it privately without disrupting your public image or public life and without relapse. I put the link for that in the video description. Now, when it comes to quitting drugs, you don't need more willpower. You need clarity. and you need to be decisive. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen people going into quitting cannabis just like I did, trying to white knuckle it, trying to grit and bear it, thinking that they're up for the battle of their life. And that's simply not true. Because in these instances, we've failed to identify what it is we actually need to succeed. And we failed to identify that because it's hard to make decisions when you're suffering constantly from decision fatigue. So you don't need willpower, you need clarity. You need to be decisive. Quitting cannabis was one of the highest leverage decisions I ever made. For my career, for my business, for my relationships, for my mental health, and for my physical health. Being decisive in today's world, especially when we have so many things trying to grab your attention, is quite literally a superpower. And it's a superpower that can get you significantly further ahead in life than where you currently are. Even if where you currently are is a pretty good place. Being decisive doesn't just give you back your time, it gives you back your mind. Being decisive reduces stress, it reduces friction, it increases mental clarity, it increases confidence. Being decisive, as I said, is a superpower. And it's a superpower that you have an opportunity right now to take advantage of. It's something you owe yourself. It's something you should take advantage of because it's literally sitting on your lap. You are one decision away from that opportunity. The only thing standing in your way is the conversation that's occurring in your head between your two ears. The only thing standing in your way is a single decision. Let's say maybe the withdrawal symptoms are standing in your way because cannabis withdrawal can be somewhat serious. I want you to follow me right into the next video where I talk a little bit about cannabis withdrawal and how to manage that.